Museums used to fear selling out. Now many are chasing revenue so hard that critics are asking, are they quietly sidelining the art itself? And this is the part most people miss. The biggest battle in museums today isn't just about culture, it's about cash, branding, and survival. A giant billboard over the art. Driving between Miami Beach and downtown Miami, it's almost impossible to ignore the massive 800-square-foot digital billboard towering over the highway. This huge screen, larger than many city apartments, flashes luxury ads for brands like Yves Saint Laurent and Tiffany & Company, grabbing the attention of commuters and tourists alike. What surprises many people is who owns this lucrative piece of advertising real estate, not a media company, but the nearby Pérez Art Museum Miami, PAMM, a leading institution for modern and contemporary art. That billboard is not just a flashy screen, it's a major revenue engine. Estimates suggest it brings in at least $1.2 million each year to support PAMM's operations, helping keep the museum running and its programs alive. But here's where it gets controversial. This billboard has become a symbol of a much larger shift across American museums, where cultural institutions are leaning into entrepreneurial strategies that would have been unthinkable a generation ago. Museums turning into businesses. Across the United States, many museums are facing mounting financial pressure, rising costs, fluctuating attendance, and shrinking support from traditional donors. In response, more and more institutions are embracing business-style innovation, exploring everything from selling art and merchandising to technology ventures and even real estate deals. Instead of relying mainly on ticket sales, gift shops, and cafes, they are trying to act more like creative enterprises that actively monetize their expertise and assets. Museum shops and cafes, once seen as safe and friendly income streams, often turn out to be financial drains when staff, inventory, and overhead are fully accounted for. That's why some museum leaders now argue that instead of clinging to low-margin side businesses, institutions should ask a tougher question: what kinds of ventures could actually generate sustainable profit without undermining their cultural missions? This rethink is pushing museums into territory that blurs the line between nonprofit mission and commercial hustle. Why the old funding model is breaking. For decades, museums typically survived through a familiar mix: philanthropic donations from individuals and corporations, government grants, and a relatively small slice of earned income from things like tickets and memberships. On average, money that museums earn through operations has historically made up less than a third of total revenue for U.S. institutions. That model is under severe strain today, especially after the pandemic disrupted visitor patterns and many museums still have not fully recovered their pre-2020 attendance. At the same time, corporate sponsorships have been retreating in many places, public arts budgets have been squeezed, and longtime major donors are aging or shifting their giving priorities. Under the Trump administration in particular, federal support for the arts came under additional pressure, intensifying the sense of instability. Put together, these trends have left many museums with a worrying gap between what their current funding provides and what it actually costs to run ambitious exhibitions, care for collections, and serve their communities. New money from digital art and innovation. To close that gap, museums are increasingly trying to monetize what they already have: expertise in art, intellectual property, and operational know-how. The Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, in New York, for example, moved into the digital frontier by commissioning NFTs and other digital artworks, taking a percentage of each sale and a smaller cut of resales on the blockchain. This approach allows the museum to tap into new collectors and markets without directly selling off pieces of its own collection. Other institutions are pivoting into more technical or behind-the-scenes innovations. The Georgia O'Keeffe Museum in Santa Fe patented an advanced art shipping crate designed to better protect artworks in transit, planning to license this technology to both commercial companies and nonprofits. These kinds of moves show how museums are trying to transform logistical headaches, like art shipping, into intellectual property they can monetize, while positioning themselves as problem solvers for the broader cultural sector. When selling out meets artistic integrity. Not everyone in the museum world is comfortable with this entrepreneurial turn. For more traditional leaders, deep commercialization can trigger an instinctive unease, especially when it feels like art is being turned into just another product line. One director, for example, initially worried that partnering with a company to sell high-priced artist prints might cheapen or diminish the perceived value of the original artworks. That fear, that commerce could dilute artistic integrity, is at the heart of the selling out debate. Yet when the quality of those editions proved to be extremely high, those concerns softened, and the financial impact was hard to ignore. In just a short span, one foundation generated millions of dollars from such limited editions by prominent artists, with more releases planned. The same institution even struck a multi-year consulting deal to advise on a large public art park funded by a tech billionaire, trading its curatorial expertise for a fee. But here's where it gets tricky. How far can museums go down this road before their role as guardians of culture starts to look more like that of high-end creative consultants? How some museums are professionalizing revenue. At the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia, leaders openly acknowledge that nearly every institution is now wrestling with the same hard questions about financial sustainability and shrinking public funding. Over just a few years, the Barnes has increased the share of its budget covered by earned income from a fifth to well over a quarter, growing its revenue in dollars as well as percentage. That change did not come from simply selling more tickets, it came from treating the museum's knowledge and systems as marketable services. The Barnes has branched into areas like consulting for other organizations, licensing its online learning platform that lets students zoom in on artworks in detail, and providing administrative support for neighboring arts institutions through operating partnerships. In practice, this means a museum known for its collection is now also functioning as a service provider, IT licensor, and back-office hub. Supporters see this as smart, mission-aligned innovation. Skeptics worry that administrative and commercial work can start to distract from the core focus on art, education, and research. Legal limits and mission creep. There are also legal and tax boundaries that complicate this new entrepreneurial spirit. Under U.S. law, nonprofit organizations must pay additional taxes on income that comes from activities not closely related to their stated mission. If a museum goes too far into unrelated businesses, say, ventures that have little to do with art, education, or cultural preservation, it may not only face tax bills but also raise questions about whether it is drifting away from its reason for existing. Experts warn that problems arise when museums invest time and resources into projects that fall far outside their core competences. That can mean staff and budget being pulled away from curating exhibitions, caring for collections, and serving audiences, and instead being poured into side businesses that may or may not succeed. So the real dilemma is not just should museums make money, but can they do it in ways that reinforce, rather than erode, their core mission. The Miami Billboard Backlash. PAMM's enormous billboard is a vivid case study of both the upside and downside of this new era. Financially, the screen is a powerful asset, but socially and politically, it has sparked conflict. The museum has already faced multiple lawsuits and tension with its neighbors over the project, prompting negotiations with the city and adjustments to how the billboard operates. As part of one settlement, PAMM agreed to pay the city a significant annual fee and to limit the billboard's hours, acknowledging concerns from local stakeholders. The neighboring science museum, Frost Science, went even further and brought a legal challenge against state transportation authorities, arguing that the billboard violates state law, advertises products that have nothing to do with the museum's business, and worsens light pollution in the area. Its CEO has said that his institution turned down a similar proposal because hosting ads for cars, alcohol, and luxury goods felt out of step with the mission of an educational museum. PAMM, for its part, insists that every step of the process was carefully vetted by regulators and that the project complies with all applicable rules. When leaders change, so do the schemes. Another complication is that many of these entrepreneurial projects are closely tied to specific leaders. When directors leave, their pet initiatives can lose momentum, shift in direction, or even be quietly phased out. One contemporary art museum in Houston, for example, began offering curatorial services to organizations across the country that wanted to integrate public art into their campuses, from medical centers to infrastructure sites. That move turned the museum into a kind of creative consultant for hire on a national scale. After a change in leadership, however, the new team signaled that future efforts would focus more on regional projects and closer community partnerships. Even when such experiments succeed financially, they can put real strain on